Okay, here we are again. I'm Larry Stein, Stein On Stuttering, with Cookie Green from Stuttering to Confidence, and we have yet another video. And Cookie's going to ask me her one question of the day. And what is it, Cookie?
Now, before I ask you this question, I want to let you know that back about, I would say it was probably 6 to 7 months ago.
Huh.
I stopped stuttering. I
Hmm.
became fluent. Can you believe it? Fluent
Wow.
for about 4 months.
Hmm.
Now, what I had done was taken that theory that you taught me, breathe, emphasize, phrase, and then I added this charismatic style. So I started reading in a way that I brought whatever I read to life. I wanted to be able to read it in that way, and I stopped stuttering. But now it came back. So here's my good question to you.
Okay.
I want to know, how do you make that automatic when you speak? Now you use breathe, emphasize, phrase, and these things, but you have made it an automatic habit. Tell us about that. That's what I want to know.
Okay, that's the question. All right, so let me just back up just a little bit. So I really didn't create breathe, emphasize, phrase. All I did was I had a volunteer post from a little tiny nonprofit, and the only reason I was asked to do that was it was a bunch of really old people and they wanted someone young. I kept on turning them down for being the president of this little tiny nonprofit because I would have to lead board meetings. And I had led, by that time, my speech had improved a lot. I was probably about, 54 years old, 53 years old by then. And I had really improved my speech a lot during that time. But I never led meetings with more than a few people. And this would be with 20 or 30 people. And I had not given a speech. I'd have to give these little 5-minute speeches, maybe 10 if I went over. And I'd have to do that, every couple months. And I certainly didn't want to do that because the last time I had given one of those, a 10-minute speech, it took me 28 minutes. So I didn't want to do that at all. And they kept on asking, because the only people they had to do it were in their 80s. And I finally gave in. And it was one of those things, we talk about getting out of your comfort zone. And that was definitely out of my comfort zone. But I kind of adjusted to it while I was giving these speeches. So one day I'm walking out of a board meeting and I'm kind of upset about it because, again, most everyone on the board is old and I just can't get them to do anything I want. I'm frustrated. I'm walking out the door. I'm about to go out and I realized something. I realized that I speak better when I public speak. And at that time, public speaking for me was just phrasing because I learned that in speech therapy and that was helping me. And the other thing I was doing, I was just kind of, to relax myself, I would play around up on the stage, sometimes giving speeches. And I would, play games with myself. I would for example, I'd see how long I could pause before anyone got fidgety. I mean, I would do all kinds of crazy stuff just to relax myself. Okay, so then I was phrasing, and I said, I'm just going to phrase all the time. I'm throwing away how I speak. I'm throwing away because I'm not getting anywhere with that. And also, by the way, my back was against the wall because I had opened up my dream business, my own business finally, about a year before, and I hardly had any clients because I wasn't able, well, maybe I held myself back, but I felt I couldn't call strangers. I had a
Right.
hard time asking for a lot of money because, you know, I have $1 million minimum. And it's hard to ask for $1 million. I couldn't introduce myself. I couldn't say my name. Anyways, so just to shorten this, I decided I'm gonna speak in phrases all the time. I'm gonna live phrase to phrase to phrase. And that's what I told myself. This was like a 10-second decision. I literally just decided nothing's working for me. I'm throwing it away and I'm gonna do this. And then over time, just from watching broadcasters on TV, I noticed that not only do they phrase, they also emphasize words. I said, this is crazy. And I realized, of course, they're doing it to make their speech more compelling. I realized it later that it helps me use up my breath so that I can speak and take a full breath. And I had another breathing thing. So all these, I had a bunch of things come together. And I said, all right, so a simplified way of how a professional speaker speak is they take a breath before they speak, they talk, they emphasize a word near the end of the phrase, they end the phrase, and they go on to the next phrase. They phrase to phrase to phrase. And that's how most of these guys speak, in a very simplified way. So I really didn't create anything. I just decided I'm going to simplify what they're doing and make it mine, which is what I did. And how I made it automatic was number one, I threw away how I talked. So I didn't just pull this out when I needed it. I did this all the time. And people always ask me, oh, when should I do it? All the time. And that's a hard commitment to make. That's hard for a lot of people. Now, at that time, I was 55 years old. So I stuttered for 50 years, a little more than that. And much of it pretty heavily. But I had improved a lot in the last couple of decades, being in the work world and talking. But I just decided I'm throwing away how I talk. I'm going to speak phrase to phrase to phrase. And then I added something that you just mentioned, that I realized that not only do I have to emphasize words, but I need to be really expressive. And that way, that helped me clear out my breath, so that, again, if I were charting my breath, I would breathe, talk, 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 and I'd be real expressive, and I would emphasize the word toward the end and use up my breath. So I breathe, and it's all used up by here, so I could take another full breath and talk. And what most people do is they just talk like this with the breath, and they don't talk, and they'll say, well, I'm phrasing. No, you're not. You're not speaking in distinct phrases. So I just, how I made it automatic was, A, I threw away how I spoke. Number two, I decided I'm doing this all the time. This is the only way I speak. And I just drummed it into myself, just sheer practice, not only first by myself in my room, reading, you know, I would read a couple paragraphs, and then I would talk about what I read, or I talk about something else. And I would only do it with breathe and emphasize phrase. It's because the key is you don't want to think about your speech. You don't want to work on your speech. You want this to be automatic. You want it to be as automatic as breathing.
Right.
You don't want to have to think about this, because the key is to focus on who you're talking with. The focus is on who I'm with and content. It's not on myself. And that's the biggest thing for people who stutter. They have a hard time understanding that this is an all the time commitment, and it's a lot of practice. It's just practice, you know. So, you know, there's the old Chinese proverb, what is it? 1,000 times to discipline, 10,000 times to mastery. And I just brute force beat this into myself. And I was willing to throw away how I talk and just speak this way all the time. Now, I don't think about it. I do
Right.
not think about this at all. My focus right now is on you and how I can best express this, what I want to get across to you. So that's the key, because if you're focusing on how you're talking, which is how my life was my entire life, and you're switching words in and out and all that, then it's just not a viable way to speak, and you're gonna stutter, and that's probably why people always talk about relapse. They always ask me, well, haven't you relapsed? No, I've never had anything like that.
Yeah.
Because this is how I talk all the time. Whether I'm talking to my wife, and I would never stutter with her,
Right.
all the time, or I'm in a big business meeting all the time. That's the key, is to make a commitment and to do it, so that your brain eventually gets the idea, oh, this is how we're talking all the time. And then you gradually make, bring it from easy situations to more difficult and challenging situations. And by the way, for me, the most challenging situation was to say my name, which I finally did at the age of 57. And that took me months of work.
Wow.
This is just hard work, my friend. There is no magic. There is nothing clever. There's nothing smart about what I did. It was just a lot of work. And everything I did, to my surprise, what I learned later, has a basis in some kind of psychology, cognitive behavioral
Right.
therapy.
Right.
And well, I can't come up with the names right now, but this is what they call automaticity, and it's basically implicit learning. I actually just learned this last week. It's implicit learning. In other words, you've drummed it into yourself so many times that it's implicit. It's in you, and it's automatic. So you don't think about it. You
Right.
just go. That's it.
That's it, huh? So next time I am going to find out from you, how do you throw away your old way of thinking? Because
It's
I know
that
some
simple.
people say that, but being able to throw it away, we want to know.
Honestly, I was just desperate. I was simply desperate. I not to make light of it,
Right.
but there's really not much to say. I just was so desperate to build my business, to be able to talk well enough to do that. I never thought that I would have this kind of fluency, and I am not a perfect speaker. I can be thrown off, like in foreign countries. I can be thrown off in certain situations, just for a moment, maybe. So I would never say that I overcame stuttering or that I'm a perfect speaker, but most people think I am, and I always tell them, no, I am not. But there really isn't any secret to this, how I threw it away. It's just I made a commitment that this is how I'm talking all the time, and I drummed it into myself so that I don't think about it at all.
So you were
That's the key.
determined, and you had a why you were doing it that was so strong that it caused you to just toss it.
Well, yeah, and I worked really hard. Yeah.
Toss your old way of thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I just worked really, really hard. And frankly, if you knew me, if you knew me beforehand, you would not think that I would be the one to work really hard at this, because I was definitely an underachiever in my life, and I was definitely not disciplined. But I made a little bit of progress, and I caught fire. I got enthralled with this, and just the reason I emphasize phrase, that was just the step one.
One,
After
right.
that, that led me to, I realized I had to work through the psychological stuff. And then, which I have videos on right now. And then I had to work situation after situation. So this was really just step one for me. But it was a big step and it was a lot of work, but that set the foundation for everything I did afterward. And so that,
But yeah,
go ahead.
the good thing is that you say that you were not somebody who was a overachiever or somebody, so now everybody can relate. They can say, well, wow, then if he can do that, this is doable. So
I think it's doable.
so
And
thanks for sharing that, because that would help a lot of people. This is powerful stuff. So you are a good teacher of how to speak more smoothly by sharing your achievements and story. But anyway, I just want to thank you for that.
oh, well,
Yeah.
thank you. It's an honor to be on here with you. You have a great site, and both of us are trying to reach people,
Right.
and trying to help them. And yes, I honestly, I was certainly not someone that you would say, oh, well, he'll just take care of that. I mean, think
Right.
about it. It took me
Right.
50 years to get this desperate to work so hard at it. But so you can imagine all the time in between that, a lot of frustration and a lot of failure and a lot of frustration. So anyways, it's been fun as always, and I look forward to our next conversation.
Okay, I'll have a good one for you next time.
You always are. Take care. See you later.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.